Well, here I am. I'll bet you thought I wasn't going to make it in at all. It is 9:18 p.m. Central Standard Time, and I am just coming on air. I am Scotty Roberts. I'm your host, and this is the Intrepid broadcast right here on what we will affectionately call the Captain's Cabin Radio Network for now. And welcome to everybody who is out there. And once people get the notification, we'll have some more people coming in. Pardon my tardiness. I was late. So here is what we're going to do. We're going to play the intro to the show and take off as if it never happened. Stand by.
The Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Well, greetings and happy Monday night to all of you out there. This is Scotty Roberts, the tardy Scotty Roberts, the late to the show Scotty Roberts. I have my reasons, and it doesn't matter much, but I appreciate the fact that you'd still come and you'd still attend the show. Those of you out there who are not in the chat room, come on in. You are welcome here to chat. I made it in just a little late this evening, and my apologies. I wish I had somebody that filled in like a station full of people where you could bring them all in and then they start talking for you. Hey, Delaney Pearl Jones, good to see you. Better late than never, says Sean R. Vest. Thank you, sir. And we got Ryan Gale is out there somewhere, and Sean Stroik, and just a very few that are showing their faces so far. But you're all welcome to come in as usual. Pardon my lateness. And on we shall go. I will tell you this, along with my being tardy, I do not have an official program for tonight. We're just going to go off the seat of our pants. And we're going to talk. So we're going to open it up right away for people calling. If anybody wants to call in, you can. And if you don't, it's not that I can't figure out what to say next, because I will. But here is the call-in number or the link. If you want to call into the studio, you will appear down below here, and I'll see you, and we'll take it from there. Hey, Randall Flagg. Maybe they dozed off, says Randall Flagg. Oh, they might have. Nah, there's a bunch out there. So according to the numbers. So numbers is numbers. And not everybody wants to talk. That's okay. They may have dozed off waiting for me to show up, which I didn't do. So I had a couple of other things going on and a bunch of stuff going on today. And all of a sudden, my wife took the girls to Scouts. My boy is home. I cooked him some dinner. And all of a sudden, I looked up at the clock, and guess what? It was 9:07 when I looked at the clock. And I said, "Oh, you got to be kidding me. I'm supposed to be doing radio right now." And I've been so back to back all afternoon. About 10 times I thought, oh, I got to put up a post. I thought about it this morning. I got to put up a post for tonight's show. And I put it off to do other things as I'll hit it this afternoon. And then all afternoon I was actually tattooing all afternoon. That's something I've been working on. I have not tattooed a human being yet. The cat didn't like being shaved and tattooed, but it's okay. But I did it on some fake skins. And then I had other things lead into other things and just overlapping all the rest of the day. And I didn't realize till I was done cooking dinner for my son that because I'm still not used to the daylight savings time. It's still light outside at 9:00 at night this time of year. And so it's not even hitting me what time of day it is. So there you go. Here I am. I am. And so all kinds of things going on in the world, all kinds of things going on in government, all kinds of things going on in the spirit world, all kinds of things going on in the ufological world, all kinds of things going on in the archaeological field. So there's all kinds of things we can talk about because right now I didn't plan anything for tonight. That's my radio show planner is pretty much a day in advance. And I didn't plan anything for today. But you know what we can do? We can look at some very cool stuff. Here it is. There's something, if I just look it up, and here we go. My topic here is archaeology and the supernatural. Now, have you ever thought about that? I'm sure you have with some of the things I've talked about on this show, but what about archaeology? What is archaeology? It's the science. It's an anthropological science. It's the study of our pasts. It's the study of human beings. It's the study of how we did what we did when we did it, and the study of looking at things and trying to figure out when they happened, why they happened, who it happened to, or to establish stories. We do that as well. I saw a very interesting program on YouTube yesterday, and I've mentioned this guy before. He's got a show on there called Expedition Bible. Now, his starting point is one of very biblical, but he is into biblical archaeology. He grew up, his father had a job in oil in Saudi, and he worked in Saudi Arabia for years. And this guy grew up, he's an American, and he grew up in Saudi Arabia from the time he was a small boy until I think all the way through. And then he now resides in Israel, and he has done all sorts of shows. He wrote a book entitled When God Came Down. This is, of course, from his religious point of view, his spiritual point of view, and writing about different things, archaeological finds that substantiate biblical history. And it's a very interesting show. If you ever want to watch him, I think he's called Expedition Bible on YouTube. That's where he has his show. And he just put up a very interesting show yesterday. And I did not study this out, but he was talking about how do we know when certain things happened in BC? He says, how do we date those things? Because not everybody in ancient times used dates that we can match up. And there was about 130 years ago, there was some archaeology in Nineveh, which was is in current day Iraq. And Nineveh, the ancient city, and you may know the sound of the name Nineveh. It was connected with the Jonah and the whale story, where God says, "I'm gonna go preach to Nineveh." And Jonah runs. I don't want to do that. Nineveh hates us. I want them to die. I don't want to warn them that you're going to judge them. I think of Captain Kirk in the Star Trek. Was it 5 or 6? The Undiscovered Country, where Spock, and they have this big meeting, and the Klingon race is having a crisis and dying out, and he appoints Kirk to be an ambassador, and Kirk hates the Klingons. And he says, how could you do that? He says to Spock in private, he says, how could you be so presumptuous as to do this? And Spock was like, I thought that there was no better representative. And he said, Jim, the Klingons will die. And Kirk says, let them die. That's his response. Let them die. And that's at the beginning of the movie. And so this is how I think you had Jonah in his story. Hey, Rainey, come over and say hi since you're home. My lovely wife has walked into the room. Some enchanted evening. That's not her. That's the little version of her. There's my wife. Hey.
Hi.
How'd it go?
That's fine.
Good. I forgot I had a radio show until almost 10 minutes after.
Nice. Somebody call you and was like,
Nope,
hey.
nope. I was just looking at the clock and I went, holy shite. It's 9:10. And so I rushed down.
I went to Dollar General.
Yeah. Is it a mess?
Yeah.
I take great glee. Let them die.
It's bad. It's really bad. And Melinda's supposed to go in tomorrow. Woo.
I'm going to tell you something. I've kind of filled you in on elements of this story, but my wife was working at Dollar General, just a little thrift store up here. She was working 5 days a week. They wanted her to become an assistant manager. They asked her a few times, and she said, "No, I don't want to work nights, and I don't want to work weekends because I got kids." And now that's a mom that puts her kids and her family first. And so, but she is damn good. Let me compliment her in front of her face. Damn good at what she does. She's meticulous. She's organized. She's so organized with me. I want to rebel sometimes. Like, don't
You rebel
tell me
all the time.
what to do. You're not the boss of me.
And then you yell at me in a dad voice. Stop it.
Stop it now. And so she got hired at a certain dollar rate. And then she came home one day. And by the way, she is the practical manager of that store, even though there is a manager. Really nice guy. Just my opinion, probably needed a little more training before he became a manager. Heavily reliant on Rainey. They would call her all the time on her days off. She was on vacation with her mom for a long weekend in Colorado. They were calling her out there. How do you do this? How do you do that? And so they kept offering her positions and higher up positions. And she said, no, I don't want it. And then she's cut back to 3 hours for the summer.
3 days a week.
3 days a week. I'm sorry. She cut herself back to 3 days a week. I want to work with my kids. I want to have my time with my kids this summer. And so in the course of all of this, she finds out there's new hires and they're making more than she is. And she's like, I'm not big and jealous that way. But for $1 an hour job, some of these people were making 25% more than she was.
Yeah, they hired a lady for $18 an hour to do not even my job. She wanted to do less of my job and work my hours, which was Monday through Friday. And that's really where it all started.
Yeah. So it all started there. And then she continued to work. And the higher up, the regional, whatever it was, came in and told her, well, we'll give you that raise. Oh, there was one day the higher up told the manager, I'm not going to give her raise until she cleans out that storage room. Not her job. So what does Rainey do? She cleans out and organizes the whole storage room. Their in-store warehouse, kind of.
She did make up for it because like a month later came back in and was going through all the stuff the manager needed to do. And she said, do you want to take notes or should I just tell Rainey? Are you going to remember this all or do I need to tell Rainey? And
yeah,
I heard that and it was like,
she told that to the manager. Yes. She was giving him instructions and said, you want to take notes or I'll just tell Rainey because Rainey will get it all. Well, she promised Rainey her raise. I'll give you your raise. I'll put you where you want to be. That was about 8 weeks ago.
It was a couple months ago, yeah.
A couple months ago.
Might be almost 3.
And it went on for several weeks. Don't do that stuff, please. Hold on. I got to put my chair back up. All right.
Don't mess with the knobs, Ellie.
So, that's why I don't have children in here while I broadcast. So, the manager, Rainey went to the manager and she said, I'm not seeing my raise. Oh, it'll come. This happened paycheck to paycheck to paycheck over the last 2 months. Finally, Rainey went in and she said, you know what? Hey, do me a favor. Bring me one of my little cans of Coke, please. Red Cokes. And so Rainey told him, if I don't see my raise this next week, don't put me on the schedule again until my raise comes through. And now, so she hasn't worked for now 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
This is the start of my second week.
Start of her second week. And nobody's calling her. They haven't let her go. They haven't laid her off. Nothing like that. They just haven't put her on the schedule. So now that gives you a little meat to the story when Rainey said she went to the Dollar General tonight. They stopped in to buy something. Place is a disaster.
It's a mess. It's a bad mess.
And so there's a little... doesn't that, when things like that happen to you, what is it about us as humans where we go, That kind of makes me feel good. I'm gone for a week and the place is falling apart.
Now she's supposed to come in tomorrow. I really hope she comes in tomorrow because I want to know. I just want to know. I want to know what she says.
Coke Zero. Yeah, I
You're
would
gonna
like to
get
hear what she
tagged by
says too.
YouTube now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, is that copyright infringement? So, anyway, there you go. Dollar General or Dollar Tree? Dollar General, the yellow sign people.
Yeah. The
So,
DG, not the DT.
you know, as a husband, I want to go in there. I told Rainey, I said, I'm on fire about this. I'm like, I'm going to go in there and talk to them and ask them. And of course, you all are already seeing red. You know, we shouldn't be doing that. I shouldn't be doing that. I wasn't going to be nasty. I was going to be professional and polite and say, do you people keep your word? I know the manager. I've gotten to know him. He's a nice guy. We like each other well enough. I'd like to go in and say, hey, what's with your company? They're not keeping their word. And he's not talking to the regional either.
It's not regional. It's
district. Whoever she is, district. And so, Rainey pretty much thinks he's kind of afraid to do that. He doesn't know what to do, how to do, because he's not managerial material. So
I don't think he's afraid. I think he just doesn't know how.
Doesn't know how. For me, you know how you know how? You go, hello, district manager? Hey, yeah, this is me. Got to talk about Rainey's salary or wage. So that's how you do that. I could go up and give him a lesson in 30 seconds. Here's how you do this. Pick up your phone, find her number, call her. Ask her about Rainey's raise. That's how you do that. So, and, there's parts of me that want to, there's that inner demon you had that says, I'm going to call this company. It's not going to get anything but maybe get her blacklisted, but from ever working for them again, which doesn't matter. But you want to go, hey, what's with your company? Does your company lie to your employees? Is that what it is? So, that's the tack I'd like to take.
What needs to happen is you just have to go in every day, get a receipt.
Yep.
So that you can go online and do the online survey thing.
Oh, yeah, make a survey.
But the store really sucks since Rainey's been gone, and maybe they'll get
There you go. There you go.
It's dirty. It's messy.
The store is really bad shape since Rainey left.
Now, when I walked in, some lady had lost her phone. We walked in 3 minutes to closing. Lost her phone. They kind of pushed everyone out except for this lady who was walking around, but they didn't realize there was somebody else in the store too.
You can come around. You might as well.
It was just messed up, but there was carts everywhere, the big rolltainers everywhere.
There's Rowan.
Carts full of stuff everywhere. It was just gross. It's gross.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the story for tonight on that. We were talking about Jonah. We'll get back to that. And Jonah was even a sidetrack from what I was talking about.
I thought Flynn did. No.
So there you go.
The frick frack, man.
Yeah.
You would let Flynn have it, but not me?
No.
We'll hold this conversation somewhere else.
Well, do you want
Sweetheart.
We'll talk about it afterwards. Thank you.
I'm hungry. Can I have it?
We'll talk about it later.
I'm gonna eat it.
No.
You're hungry?
I'm hungry. And you're gonna sit down.
No, you already had your own.
No. Can I have it?
No.
No, my dear. My child says to me,
I'm gonna
no.
Take a bite.
No.
No, that's for
I
Flynn.
spit in it. Don't eat it.
That sucks.
Mom, spit in it.
Okay, well, if Flynn doesn't want it, I'm gonna eat it.
No.
Yes, I'll ask
All
him.
right. So, guys,
I'm gonna ask him.
we'll get back into this whole story of Jonah and the whale. God, according to the story in the Bible, God said, Jonah, go to Nineveh. Tell them unless they repent, I will destroy them. And Jonah's like, I don't care. He's like, God, let them die. I'm running. And Jonah was a prophet. So he runs, he gets on a ship. We know the story. A storm at sea. And they throw him out. He says, it's me. I'm the one that's caused this. Throw me in the water. I don't know why he had to ask them to throw them in the water. He could have just jumped ship. But they throw him in the water. It must have been some symbolism or something. Well, as the story goes, a giant fish, it wasn't a whale, it was a giant fish, swallows him. And he's in the belly of the fish for 3 days. Or as we learned with the resurrection of Jesus, in the Jewish terminology, 3 days is part of a day, a full day, and part of another day. So it could have been they threw him in at night, and the next day, and then the next morning he's spit up. Not dead. And so then he goes to the city of Nineveh, and he preaches to the city of Nineveh to repent. Guess what Nineveh does? They repent. It says they all put on sackcloth and ashes, a symbol of repentance, and they all repent and turn to God. And later in the story, Jonah's kind of pissed about it. He's kind of like, see, now they repented. I hate the Ninevites, just like you see today. The Gazans hate the Israelites, the Arabs, the whatever. Same thing 4,000 years ago. Well, more like 2,500 years ago, time of Jonah. So this is what this guy, archaeological evidence, he says, how can we date for any surety the things that happen in the Bible? How do you put dates to BC or BCE, if you will, if there's no way to establish that calendar? And one of the best ways they've done it is by solar eclipses, because NASA has set up a thing. You can go back 8,000 years and see when, by all the mathematics of the sky and the earth and the tilting and all of this, you can figure out when solar eclipses took place. And so they have found in the records of Nineveh, this is Ashurbanipal was the king. They find records of when a solar eclipse took place. And the way they kept their records, their years didn't have numbers. Their years were named after high officials who were granted the honor of having the year named after them. So every year in Assyrian history, especially in that period, was all marked by an official's name. So in the year of Guklap Ashturbal, this and this happened. And this was the year of the eclipse. And so they try to figure out, well, when did this happen? And the other events around it in the previous years and the following years. And they look up the eclipse, and sure enough, they were able to come to, I think it was 753 BCE as the date of the eclipse that took place in the reign of Ashurbanipal. And Ashurbanipal was the king on the throne in Nineveh, according to the book of Jonah.
I'm going to go upstairs and let you have fun.
All right. This is not fun for you?
No.
You could stay here and enjoy this fun with me.
This is the 7th time I've heard you say it. I'm good.
This is so exciting.
It might even be the 15th. I don't know.
I have never talked about the solar eclipses before. This is brand new. See, proving it all melts together for her. Go upstairs. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
See ya.
No kisses.
Give me a kiss.
No.
Give me a kiss. Why not?
Wait, I walked out. I'll blow you one.
Get over here.
No.
I want flesh and blood kisses.
No.
Why'd you leave without a kiss?
Yeah, I'll give you one later.
Because she'll give me one later. Tee hee hee, she says. All right. So anyway, there we go. So this is what this guy, Expedition Bible, he has his show on YouTube. Go look him up. And he is very evangelical. I think evangelical. He talks evangelical. But he's an archaeologist, and he lives in Israel. He's been there since he was a kid. And he's very good at what he does. And you'll enjoy his shows because while he does a little preachiness in some of his shows, meaning he puts across a biblical message, he still goes in with looking for real data. He's kind of the attitude, why should biblical archaeology matter if I'm not using real data? He says, I've got to make sure that what I'm teaching, what I write about, what I'm researching is real data. And so when you go into these eclipses, and there's a couple of different ones that the biblical record even mentions, or at least the historical record, the astrological record, will establish when those took place. And when this particular eclipse took place would have been, it says in biblical text, talking in the book of Jonah, that the people were already, they were primed and ready for something. And so we're thinking that I think there's some other little things in there that prove that this date was about the time that Jonah went into Nineveh. And they all repented. There's a big spiritual revival. So it was very cool. Sean says, Data, my favorite Star Trek character, indeed. And yeah, I like Data. We just did a Spock mug today. Oh, I don't know where Rainey put it. Hey, Rainey, can you have one of the kids bring down that Spock mug? There's a mug that Mom made, a white ceramic mug like this one, only it's a Spock mug. Ask her if you can bring that down, please. I think it's up there, unless it's down in her studio over there. Anyway, I'll show that off to you. But so biblical archaeology. What about biblical archaeology? As we started impromptu to look into archaeology in the supernatural. That it can be connected in a few ways, including the study of religion, the study of ritual in past societies, and through short stories that combine the two. There's the archaeology of religion and ritual that takes place. So if you're starting to look into, I can tell you something, archaeology and the supernatural. Now that can be interpreted different ways, because some people, thank you, some people will look at supernatural as just simply being religious things or spiritual things or things of that nature. Whereas I'm talking paranormal. I want to know, is there any paranormal that crisscrosses with archaeological data? And I do know that, and I've told you all about this event before, but, or events, when I was in Egypt at John and Maria's site, John Ward and his wife, Maria Nilsson, we had all the archaeologists around the table on the boat. Their dig house during their season for archaeology was a big old dahabeah, about 100 years old, Victorian era, as a matter of fact. So a little older. And it had 10 cabins down below and the wide open deck, but the canvas is all draped. And because there's just no rain and stuff, everything's out there. The office was out there, bookshelves, everything, all the little artifacts and things that we brought to the deck every day. And so all the archaeologists and John and I were all sitting around the table. And I was doing an Intrepid radio program with John. And this would have been 2016. And so we're talking 7 years ago when we did this, almost 8. And I was asking all the archaeologists about, I said, tell me and my listeners, what kind of activity, you're all scientists here. Many of you are PhDs. And you might not admit this out there freely in your fields. I said, but how many of you have had what could be classified as a paranormal experience or a supernatural happening while you're doing your archaeology work? And every last one of them had a story to tell. Some of them, it was just a feeling. Philippe, it sounds so cliche, but Philippe, a Frenchman, that was he was taking inscriptions and tracing them on mylar, then refining them, and they were publishing them in books. And that's what he'd do all day. He'd stand out there on a scaffolding on these old sites on their site, these old temple walls, and he would hang a big sheet of mylar and would take an ink pen and trace all the hieroglyphics. And he would do that all day long for 7 weeks. Then they'd roll it up, they'd ship it back. And so, sorry about that, Susie Q. I came in very late. That's why I didn't start broadcasting until quarter after 9. So you may not have gotten a notification. Sorry about that. And so I asked them all, do you encounter the paranormal? Philippe, even he said yes. And he was very quiet, very studious. But he said, yes, I do. I hear things and I see things and feel things and so on. And some of the Egyptians were very much, even though they were Muslim, uh, they very much have a firm. Just because you're Muslim doesn't mean you don't encounter the paranormal, and there's a lot of it in Islam. I mean, talk about the jinn, and I told you the story about the jinn, where one of the Egyptian workers, kind of like field hands that worked with the site, one of them said he saw a jinn in the cliff faces, the crags and stuff on the west bank. He came running in and up the gangplank of the dahabeah and down into the hold, screaming that he had seen a jinn in the rocky crags up there. And within a few minutes, all the other Egyptian workers came flying in. And then this was the middle of the afternoon. They all went down in the hold, smoked shisha all night. They did not go out until the next morning. And so it's there. And so it's very interesting. So archaeology and the supernatural um, exists. It's full tilt. If you look at, uh, just started to get into this, archaeology and religion and ritual. There's a growing field of study that uses methods and theories from archaeology, history, anthropology, religious studies to examine religion and ritual and supernatural ritual in past societies from a material perspective. And this field of study is concerned with the relationship between material culture and religious belief and practices. The short stories that exist combine archaeology and the supernatural, often featuring ancient remains, ghostly narratives, strange relics, stories of archaeology and the supernatural. 1895 through 1954 is an anthology of 12 short stories curated by archaeological historian Amara Thornton and the classical archaeologist Katie Soar. They explore themes of horror, ghosts, hauntings, possession, and the stories were originally published between 1895 and 1954, and they include the works by authors such as Arthur Conan Doyle, Algernon Blackwood, E.F. Benson, and many others. And so there is a connection. Archaeology and the supernatural has a deep connection. The first question I'd ask is, do you believe? The hold on a second. Just lost my story that was sitting right in front of my eyes. Oh, I don't want to look at that now because it's making me go through a sign up process just to look at this story that popped up in front of my. Hey, read our story. You click on it and you start reading. Hey, now you got to sign up. It's like, dude, I don't want to sign up. Just wanted to look at the story. What if I sign up and I don't like your story? Then I'm stuck here. So, strange relics. You got stories of archaeology and all kinds of supernatural things. This is this handheld weirds, strange relics, stories of archaeology and the supernatural between 1895 and 1954. This is the book we were talking about. Here's what it says about the book. Is that I'm sorry, I got to do this. Where they are? There they are. Okay. How is that playing? What is that? I don't know what that is. How is that playing? Where is it playing? I have no idea where that's even playing, guys. Hold on. It's not there. It's not there. It's not there. I have no idea where that's playing. Weird. Hold on. I'm going to hit my my silence until I figure out where that's coming from. Okay. I don't know if you could hear that. My computer is playing this show, but I don't know where it's playing from. Oh, I see where it is. It might be on my YouTube channel. There you go, which was open in another channel. So, and I must have clicked it. So, anyway, this was saying, let me find that. If I didn't shut it off completely, I hate these bifocals. I can't see without them to read small print. And so you got to watch me stumble through this like this. So this book, Handheld Press, presents a new classic short story anthology combining the supernatural and and archaeology. Never before have so many relics from the past caused such delicious and intriguing shivers down the spine. Archaeological historian Amara Thornton of the University of London and classical archaeologist Katie Soar from the University of Winchester have created a selection of 12 outstanding short stories encompassing horror, ghosts, hauntings, and possession, all from archaeological excavation, from a Neolithic rite to Egyptian religion to Roman remains to medieval masonry to some uncanny ceramic tiles in a perfectly ordinary American sun lounge. The relics in these stories are, frankly, horrible. Cover endorsement from the well-known UK archaeologist Mike Pitts, and the authors include, and so on. It goes through the different authors. I think I'm going to pick this book up just because I want to read these stories of archaeology and the supernatural. So very interesting stuff. You've got, and that book is available almost everywhere if you type in stories of archaeology and the supernatural. And I want to see if there's something other than that book. The past, everything now with the title that I typed in the search, archaeology and the supernatural, is just bringing up this book. So Hollywood, digging up the past for supernatural thrills, Harrison Ford, it mentions in there Indiana Jones, so on and so on and so on. Paranormal archaeology, a podcast. There's even a podcast on Spotify for paranormal archaeology. You can look that up on Spotify if you're on there. The Armchair Fortean, evil archaeology attempting to connect science to the supernatural. Now, that all by itself would be interesting, but it doesn't let me in there. The website's shut down. So, 5 questions with Ball States, ghost archaeologist. I'm curious to know what that is. Here's 5 questions. It's a little bigger type here. It says, Aaron Powers is a staff archaeologist at Ball State's Applied Anthropology Laboratories with a wide array of research interests. They include dental anthropology, that's figuring out what people ate, the wear and tear on their teeth, where they were from, how long they lived, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they include dental anthropology, Roman period diet and subsistence, bioarchaeology, ghost archaeology. Yes, you heard that right. Ghost archaeology. And what is, you know how many articles I read that have this disclaimer in it? With Halloween approaching and the supernatural on most of our minds, let's look into how many, let's deal with the paranormal and supernatural only on Halloween. So, but what is ghost archaeology? Ghost archaeology is the study of places and or objects that are associated with ghost stories, legends, urban myths. What a cool a bit of archaeology. If I was a little younger and I was to go back to school and finish off my master's in archaeology and get a PhD in archaeology, I would choose a topic like this. It would be something about ghost archaeology or the paranormal in archaeology and so on. What an interesting topic. But it's the study of all the places and or objects that are associated with the ghost stories, legends, urban myths. And we're not talking about real ghost stories because the archaeology doesn't try to locate ghosts. They're more interested in the man-made objects or artifacts and structures associated with legends and myths and what they can tell us about human activity. So, what are the misconceptions, would you think, about ghost archaeology? And the biggest misconception is that archaeologists are ghost hunters. That's just not true. They don't wear infrared goggles. They don't wait until night to record ghost sightings on infrared cameras. And they definitely don't use Ouija boards in the field. I would take a little what'd you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? Not umbrage. I would say au contraire. I know archaeologists who've used all those things in the field. They don't want to admit it to their schools, their institutions that back them. They don't want to put that in their studies. They'll be laughed at. Yet almost every archaeologist I know experiences something like this. I know I told you at the time that we're John Ward and it was French Philippe out at the site. We had a black, highly polished, round, black onyx mirror. And we use that for scrying at the Speas of Horemheb, which was actually the Speas of Hatshepsut before Horemheb took it over. By, yes, Professor Bauer, erasure. They scraped off her hieroglyphs and put all of his on. But with infrared photography, guess what? You can see all her stuff still beneath. So archaeology focuses on man-made artifacts. And in this particular instance, archaeologists focus on artifacts associated with ghost stories. And the objects range from supposedly haunted objects or beer cans left behind by young adults visiting a space that's believed to be haunted. You can look at the beer jugs of broken pottery. Archaeologists use these objects to tell a story and explain patterns of human behavior happening in an area. Ghost archaeologists use a standard scientific method and substantiated field method and techniques to answer the research questions. So what does archaeology, ghost archaeology, add to the field that wasn't there before? It presents a full narrative of what happened in a particular place associated with particular legends and myths. You can think of it as the last 5 minutes of any scary story where the mask comes off or the scary monster is revealed. And it's no longer scary, it just makes sense. And this is what archaeologists do. We use the historical documents and artifacts discovered in the field to understand what was going on. And a great example is the House of Blue Lights legend in Indianapolis. Supposedly a man named Skiles Test killed his wife, enshrined her in a glass coffin, and strung blue lights around for all to see. Another variation was a Test placed the glass coffin at the bottom of his pool. None of this is true, of course, but both of Test's wives outlived him. And this didn't stop local teens, however, and young adults from trespassing and checking out the house and the pool. So the ghost archaeology can corroborate that Test most likely did not have a glass coffin in his home. It definitely was not his wife, and the local youths did trespass onto his property to see if the legend was true. So how do you get into ghost archaeology? This particular young woman said it really fell into my lap. When I was a graduate student at the University of Indianapolis, I helped survey the Skiles Test Nature Park in Indianapolis. And the research I've done on Test's life and his property has been fascinating. The history and legend surrounding Test's life is a piece of fascinating Indianapolis history that's been long lost. And it deserves to be brought into the spotlight with a focus this time on the truth about his life. And the truth has to be more interesting than fiction, she says. So, do you believe in ghosts? Do you believe that archaeology can uncover ghost stories or factoids about ghost stories? There is all kinds of spooky archaeology that's out there. And here's another book by Jeb J. Card, Spooky Archaeology, Myth and the Science of the Past is his book. And it's published by the University of New Mexico Press in 2018. And academic and professional archaeologists often express frustration with and antagonism toward public interpreters of archaeological material who approach the topic from non-scientific or explicitly anti-rational. I had to name that once. Anti-rational perspectives and theories about ancient aliens, cursed treasures, forgotten technologies are perceived as preventing legitimate public engagement with the archaeological record while simultaneously dominating the media coverage of the field. And I will tell you, John Ward and I've mentioned this before, we had one person in particular back about, when would this be? 2012, 13, 14, in that range of time, 10, 11, 12 years ago, who continually wrote about us. And he wrote about a lot of people, Scott Walter, of course, Von Daniken and other people. And he built a big name. He was one of those, and had archaeologists and scientists all whooping and hollering about him because he would degrade every one of us and how we don't know what the hell we're talking about because we incorporate also paranormal aspects into our lives. Even though John never used it to do archaeological work, neither did Maria. But as Maria once told me, she says, Scotty, she says, here in Egypt, she says, in the work I do as an archaeologist, she says, I'm a scholar. And she said, at home in Sweden, she said, I am a witch. So there are two sides. And I always said about John, he firmly has his feet camped in each field, straddling that line between the two. So theories about ancient aliens and all cursed and all of these things, this is every time we came out with something or a book or something, there you had this guy attempting to degrade us in public. And it was open to all his sycophantic followers, you know, who it was very interesting. He would write about stuff and I would come in and I'd make comment on it. It was an open forum, like a WordPress forum, something like that. And not Facebook or anything like that, but he'd write about this stuff. And I'd say, you know, you're writing about me. That's me. And my partner, John Ward, who wrote this book, or me on this book on the Nephilim, or whatever it might be, or this article of mine you're attempting to tear apart. And he would condemn us all for making money at what we were doing by writing books. Yet in his own profile on his site, it was like, I'm working on this book and trying to get a TV show about this topic to take down these fake scientists and blah, 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 blah. So it was just his own, he was doing the same thing from a different perspective. But I would write, and then all of his followers would gang up on me in his chat room. And I can handle that. And somebody would say, you keep talking in here. I said, you keep asking me questions. I said, I'll answer your questions. I said, stop asking me questions or stop delivering up falsehoods or speculative guesses about my private life and so on. And by the way, all of this writing they were doing and that the main guy was doing was about a book I wrote. But guess what happened? I had people digging into my private life. Oh, we see here, somebody put up a post, and of course, an anonymous person or a fake name. Oh, you want to talk about, let's stop talking about your book. Let's talk about when you had a restraining order put against you by your ex-wife. Back in 2003. I said, seriously? I said, you're digging into my record? So somebody had run criminal records on me and stuff like that. I said, sure, I'll talk about that. I said, I think it's pretty slimy when we're talking about my book. But, well, this all goes to your credibility. And so we were talking about that. And I said, you know what? I said, here's the story of that. And you've all heard the stories before. This is my ex-wife who accused me of all kinds of nasty, unmentionable thing. Well, not unmentionable. That was a quick word. All kinds of sick pedophilic things in order to try to win custody. And she filed a restraining order in the process. And that's the one I told you all about, where we went in front of the judge. And the first thing, the judge threw all her stuff on the floor in front of the bench. First things first, he says, and he held up a picture that she was accusing me of engaging in child porn with my twin daughters, who were in the picture about a year old. So 31 years ago. He said, Mrs. Roberts, if this is child pornography, and he took it and threw it on the floor in front of the bench, he says, we're all in a hell of a lot of trouble today. And he proceeded to give me sole custody of my kids as a result. Blah, blah, blah. That's that story. I've told it in a much longer form before. But so you're going to have people, my whole point with all of this, she was a slimy little asshat. And this guy was. And whoever dug this stuff up. And I said, you know what? I said, my record is not for public consumption. I said, but since you've dug it up, if you got a question, go ahead and ask me. I said, I'll answer you. I'm not going to run from that. I said, what a shitty thing to do. And of course, they accused me if I talked too much. They accused me if I didn't answer a question, if I backed off. And I said, I'm not going to give you the joy of that. I said, I'll answer your question. And of course, a lot of them, one guy was like, well, I'm a teacher of science in an institution, and I know that you're wrong. I said, well, what institution do you teach for? He wouldn't say. He wouldn't. I'm not doubting that he may have been. But these people do this all under the cover of anonymity. I said, it's very convenient for you all, isn't it, that you can all be anonymous about this? I said, John and I are the only two out here with our names out in public, and the owner of this website. And that went on for a long time. We were his poster children for a long time. There was one time I got his phone number, and I called him up on the phone. I said, dude, what the hell is your problem here? And we had actually a really good conversation. But then after that, he wrote another article about my Exodus reality stuff and my writing on Moses and the bloodlines coming up from Adam. And I talked about Noah, how the Bible said he was pure in all his generations. I said he was what the Bible would call a pure human being, meaning not a human being tainted with celestial blood of the Watchers or the Nephilim or so on. You all know the story. Well, he took that line of mine saying that Noah was a pure human being, pure-blooded human being, and said I was a racist. I said, are you serious about that? I said, you do know I'm talking about celestial bloodlines, right? Not African or European, dumbass. So, anyway, as we go on, all of this stuff is called the, most of your academic and professional archaeologists express all this frustration with an antagonism toward public interpreters of archaeological materials who approach the topic from non-scientific, explicitly anti-rational perspectives, ancient aliens, the cursed treasures, the forgotten technologies, like the palmers used on the pyramids that didn't exist before 1950, as far as we know. But, stuff like that. Now, for me, I like to write about the real things, but I love to speculate about the things that are weird. The weird things in the world, the weird things in history are all speculative. So, and it's fun to talk about. So, relatedly, histories of the discipline written by professionals tend to illustrate archaeology as having progressed through increasingly scientific and technological oriented stages, emphasizing a kind of teleology toward the state of the field as of the 1970s. And fringe methods and approaches that lie outside the confines of hyper-rationalist, positivist, and materialist modes of thought are usually excluded from all serious consideration. So Jeb Card, in this book that he wrote, Spooky Archaeology, Myth and Science of the Past, he engages with these alternative approaches to archaeology in a serious fashion, attempting to understand the divergence between specialist and non-specialist, takes on the ancient past while understanding them in a relation to the history of the archaeology in practice. And in Spooky Archaeology, he argues that there are inherent characteristics of the archaeological record and the practice of archaeology that lend the field to be treated as spooky or thought of in relation to supernatural, at least romantic phenomena. You ever thought of archaeology in those terms? That's really what it is. I got to tell you something. When you're walking down, when we spelunked, almost literally, into this tomb that was a good 30 meters below the ground, and it was already below the ground, the courtyard. This is that big tomb near the Valley of the Nobles in Luxor. Remember Mohammed's Cafe that I was showing, and I was showing some of the pictures of that. It's right over the desert, a little ways right out from Mohammed's. And it had a big pit that was dug out, rectangular pit about, God, in memory, 75 feet across, 50 or more feet wide. And it went straight down, and there were ladders and now a stairway in there that they had uncovered, but pillars all the way around under the ground. They unearthed all these pillars and walkways within the pillars. It's like the opening here was a big atrium that was all covered up with dirt. And then the sarcophagus was in a side chamber, but then there was another side chamber that had a diagonal stairway with no stairs, just a diagonal shaft that went down to a landing that turned and went down another diagonal shaft. Yeah, and then the shaft on the landing was open, but dropped into, I don't know how deep they said it was, 50 feet deep maybe, but it was just black down in there. They had a couple of boards across it. Then none of this is excavated for visitors to come and visit. This was a live excavation. And so we went down, and that's where we saw the mummy heads stacked up in little, it was very surrealistic and little, like Walmart purchased red, yellow, and blue primary color plastic bins on wheels, and they had heads, mummy heads, ancient mummy heads in there. It was very cool. But and different bits of artifacts and stuff they found. But all of that is spooky. And if you think that there is not spooky things that happen, we were in the tomb in the Valley of the Nobles that's all set up for visitors. You can walk into this tomb, and hieroglyphs all over the walls, beautiful alabaster. In my memory, alabaster, white is what it looks like, white stone. And there's another side door, and it's a big wooden, rickety, like old city gates, medieval times, along the side of things, kind of down there, down a little incline, closed in, and there's this gate, these big doors, and they were big, chained shut. And Maria told me, she said, that's where I had an experience, something, and I can't remember her total story on this, but she had a very personally frightening ghost experience down there, supernatural, and she scared me. Just I'm not going down there now, But they were all chained up, and and John said it's very real. And we could get in there with the next year when I came back and we brought the trip with 13, 14 people with us. They opened that door for us. And then Jules, one of our Jules, if you're listening, one of our British guests who came along, she dropped her flashlight at the opening. That went tick, 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 all the way down and down around the corner into the. And so I had to go down, and I was going to go down and get her flashlight. I was going to be the knight in shining armor. I will get your flashlight. And in the back of my head is, oh, this is that shitty, spooky tomb that Maria talked about and her experiences in it. And I started to go down. There were no steps, and it was very rough. And I had shoes on. I was sliding in my heels. I would have had to sit down on my butt and get myself down. And so John had the right kind of boots. He went down and got it. Oh, you're just afraid, he says. I says, yeah, I'm afraid I'll slip and fall. So he went down and got her flashlight. And so I never did make it down there, but there are spooky sights. When we were screeing in the Speas of Horemheb, which is Speas is all that is like a temple or a shrine that's carved out of stone. So the rooms were all carved out of stone and hieroglyphs and all this. So the Speas, you tell me that place didn't get spooky in broad daylight down in the dark there with that high polished onyx mirror, and we're scrying into it. Yeah, that was a little bit spooky. So the first aspect of well, before I get into that, what constitutes spooky archaeology for Card, the author of this book, is the tendency for archaeology to be imagined in supernatural terms. It's participation in the perpetuation of myth and legend, especially in relation to identity, and the past practices of archaeologists as looters or smugglers and spies. And remember, even in 4 BCE, we're talking 2,400 years ago, Manetho, a historian, an Egyptian historian, said of Egypt itself, he said, Egypt is the land of gods, demigods, and spirits of the dead. So he said 2,400 years ago. And by the way, something just popped into my mind when I'm talking about the past. I said, there's something else I just learned recently. Oh, from Scott Walter, who did America Unearthed. He had a little interview he did on his site. And he said, they found it. I never knew this. Now, did you guys know this? Here's a little tidbit off to the side, a rabbit trail, small one. Not anecdotal, a side bit for you. Did you know who Bonnie Prince Charlie was? We've talked about him on this show. You probably heard his name before. Charles Edward Stuart. He was the heir to the Stuart monarchy. A relative, an offspring of Mary, Queen of Scots, down the line. He lived in the 1700s. Mary was in the early 1600s. The mid to late 1500s. And so he lived in the 1600s, and his father was James, who they tried to put on the throne of Scotland and England. Then out of James came the Jacobs, the Jacobites. Ever heard of that? The Blue Bonnets of Bonnie Dundee, the Jacobites. And so James Edward Stuart, they were trying to put him on the throne of Scotland again. And Britain would have none of this, the King of England. And so this is when the uprising, the Highlanders uprising, this is where the Battle of Culloden Moor took place. It was under Bonnie Prince Charlie. And all the clans gathered and went to battle against Lord Cumberland up just outside of Inverness, Loch Ness. And you can go to the battlefield today, but they were decimated and 1,200 prisoners taken or thereabouts. And the clan system was eradicated forever as a governing system in Scotland, 1746. This is Bonnie Prince Charlie. He ran off to Italy, where he had been living, and he lived there the rest of his life. He never became the king. In short, that story. Well, did you know he had a nephew? His nephew, and I just learned this yesterday, Napoleon Bonaparte was his nephew. I never knew that. So Yeah, Sean Vest says, I never knew that either. That's crazy. And so Charles Edward Stewart, Bonnie Prince Charlie, a Jacobite. He was going to be the Jacobite king in Scotland in the 1700s, 1740s, and it all fell apart. And his nephew was Napoleon Bonaparte in France. And Bonaparte means something. It means something like blood and bone or something. And I can't remember what. But I never knew that factoid about his. To me, that's spooky history. That's very cool. Nothing ghostly or paranormal about it, but it's damn cool. So the first aspect, let's get back to this. The first aspect of spooky archaeology the card grapples with is the prominence of extra humans in interpretations of archaeology in ancient ruins. Fairies and jinn or genies, which we've covered extensively on this show, have long been associated with the material ruins of ancient cultures. And Card argues that ancient alien theories are related to these traditions. Through a shockingly large number of examples, Card identifies similarities in traditions about extra-human relationships with ancient sites in Europe and the Americas and the Middle East. However, rather than seeing this as symptomatic of surviving local superstition, Card sees this kind of extra-human theorizing as explicitly imperialist. Contrasting with the typical treatments of such traditions as local superstition, Card suggests that the interpretations of sites as inhabited with extra-human populations tends to be more of an imposition of external authority, not emic readings of the sites. And I kind of looked at that too when people would ask me, well, do you think the pyramids were built by aliens? I said, no. They were built by a bunch of ingenious guys, dudes, women. There's a whole town that would have housed 20,000 people that was uncovered a stone's throw literally from the Pyramid of Giza. You just walk over there, and John and I did. We walked over there. We're walking through the ruins of this. And this village lasted for hundreds of years. Thousands of people, tens of thousands, lived there, born there, lived there, died there, born there, lived there, died there. Their prime job was to honor their country and their king by building his monuments, the pyramids. Stephen Myers is a good person to talk to about this. He's got his theories on the pyramids. They're very interesting. I've had him on the show before. We'll get him on again. He'd be more than happy to come on. So how about ghosts in haunted burial grounds? Those reflect kinds of these cultural appropriation and residuate settler colonialists as the victims, not the oppressors. And here are the fantasies, such as those found in horror fiction, like Bram Stoker's Dracula. Archibald Constable and Company in 1897 published that, by the way, where the empire is threatened by the non-rational elements of otherness. Indigenous knowledge, when treated in this fashion, is framed and understood through colonialist frameworks. And thus, when an ancient site is framed as a lost city, its connection with logical populations is intellectually severed, and it becomes something to be discovered and claimed by archaeologists. See where that's going? So part of the imperialist trappings of archaeological sites to its emergence as a field in the 19th century, Card sees the Victorian period as a particularly formative period for the entanglement of the supernatural and the archaeological within the simultaneous European internal struggle with modernity and the colonial confrontation with global cultural diversity. He offers historical and intellectual context for British parapsychological archaeology. For example, in various attempts at understanding sites like Stonehenge and Avebury through supernatural explanatory means. And the author looks at how museums became associated with supernatural readings of objects and explores how the British Museum became something of a focus of Victorian occult thinking. Right around the corner from the British Museum, the British National Museum, the big one, right around the corner is the college. No, is it a college or a university? University of Psychic Studies that was founded in part by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He was the author of the Sherlock Holmes series and other notables back in the late 1800s. And so that college was almost right next door. And so that museum became something of a focus of Victorian occult thinking, and hence the raising of the University of Psychic Studies. And it still exists today and still operates today. And archaeology well reflects these contradictions in Victorian science, where the rational and the supernatural are entangled with a kind of optimistic imperialism. You see how those two things got put together between. How about them cabinets of curiosity? Asks JP over in the chat room. How about them, brother? You can come on and talk about those tonight. But as this particular book progresses, it moves away from the explicitly supernatural and considers how archaeology straddles the boundary between myth and history. Early archaeologists were greatly interested in the material monuments of ancient leadership. And by the way, this is like something I did with my book on the reptilians. It started as a look into that paranormally side of the reptilian factor. And as I was continuing to write the book, I was getting into the psychology. I've mentioned this here before. I looked at the psychology of Freud and of Adler, and their two takes on as two fathers of modern psychology, and why people need stories like this to go along with these things. I wasn't debunking the supernatural side of things with the reptilians, just saying that there is another explanation for why we need these things. Freud was one that says, you have to look into your past to find why a cigar is just not a cigar, and you had Adler who said, you have to look into the future. He says, so both of them had an aspect where Freud said, we keep pulling our pasts up into our presents to try to make sense of things. Adler says, we keep looking to the future and trying to pull ourselves into what we view should be happening up there. And so their two different points of view were really establishing modern psychology and psychoanalysis, as well as explaining why we need stories like reptilians. Did they really exist? I don't know for sure. But my book went from a stricter paranormal study of it to a more psychological study, historical study, and finding out why people believe the things they do about this. That's where the book went, just like Card did with his book. Early archaeologists were greatly interested in the material monuments of ancient leadership. Builders of pyramids, statues, and temples were presenting their own leadership in relation to cosmic events. And so such thinking, Card argues, bled into early interpretations or at least fringe readings of such monuments. Eccentric temples were presenting their own leadership in relation to, bled into early interpretations, or at least fringe readings of such monuments. Eccentric translations, there it is, of ancient writing and ancient writing systems have also perpetuated quasi-mythical forms of historical reconstructions, as the inability to read ancient texts allowed for imaginative translations. You look at somebody like, sorry to say it, for those of you who like him, Zecharia Sitchin. One of my not a personal mentor, but somebody I've had very brief contact with over the years, and he's now passed on. But a biblical scholar by the name of Michael S. Heiser, and I quote him in a couple of my books. And he had a website called Sitchin is Wrong. And it wasn't from an evangelical point of view. It was, he went into the linguistics, and I bring this linguistics up in my own book. The linguistics, we're talking about how prior to a full understanding of these linguistics, people would start writing about things that now we had an understanding at the time of Sitchin. He just took his own understanding, his own interpretation of something. He talked about the word mu, M-U, in the Assyrian language, I think. Was it Assyrian or ancient Mesopotamian? Let's call it Mesopotamian. Mesopotamian language. Ancient Iraqi. He took the meaning of the word mu to mean, he called it the nose cones of fiery rockets. And this is where he got his interpretation that the Anunnaki came down with the shining nose cones of their fiery rockets from the sky. Yet the word mu, we have found out, and not just from modern translation, there is an ancient lexicon that was written thousands of years ago in stone that has several different languages that interpret some of these words. Mu is on them. And mu simply meant the curvature of the sky, of the firmament. It didn't mean the curvature of a nose cone of a rocket in the sky. That was all added afterwards. So there is stuff like that we have to look at. Archaeologists transform societies who are on the margins of written history into known quantities. Generic terms for cultures like Incan, Mayan, Celtic, derived from historical sources, are used to refer to and at the same time homogenize groups that straddle the historic prehistoric divide, bringing them in line with the cultural historical categories that are more readily associated with contemporary nation states. This positioning of archaeological thinking in relation to human conceptions of the self means that archaeology is easily employed in the construction of nationalism, identity formation, and articulation of sense of what constitutes the modern. So archaeology as colonization, colonialism is perhaps most overt in the stories of archaeologists who use field work as a cover for their work as spies. And Card describes a number of instances where archaeologists work to enact political goals and regime change in foreign lands, and shows how this history of the discipline was perhaps more formative than it is usually thought. And he connects this with the literary categories of thought, especially detective fiction. Scientifically oriented detectives who solve mysteries through careful analysis of material clues and make for an obvious archaeology metaphor. This is, by the way, all that's going through my head is my book that I've been working on. I shelved it because I've been too busy to finish it. I want to get it finished, but the 10 Breaths of Ra, about the Romani, Danio Badcock is his name, and the friend he grew up with, Eileen Byrne, not Eileen, I'm sorry, yes, Eileen Byrne, and Ellie, he calls her, and she becomes, in my book, the fictional first woman to graduate from Oxford University with a PhD in archaeology back in the early 1920s. And he is a rich kid. He's Romani. His grandparents, rode around in the carts and the wagons drawn by horses, told your fortune, the gypsies. And his father made it rich in airplanes during World War I, manufacturing of them. And they became kind of the nouveau riche in early 1920s England, and they have a big old estate and so on and so on. But I've got them as they become unwittingly occult detectives in this story with what goes on. There's all kinds of supernatural mystery, ghosts, all this kind of crazy stuff in this novel. And if it goes well, it'll be a series. The adventures, the occult detective adventures of Badcock and Byrne. So there it is. So I had to say that because we're talking about it, kind of stuff. Some of the stuff was used to be spies, and there's all kinds of spies in my novel. That's why I bring that up. Now, the literary modes of thought have been more important to development of archaeology than professionals would care to admit. It is emphasized by Carr's discussion of the horror genre, and especially his examination of how the fictional works of H.P. Lovecraft laid the foundations for many of the pseudo-archaeological theories that are prominent today. Card's argument here is interesting as he shows how archaeologists have performed behaviors that are expected in different fictional genres, in eras when both the field was becoming professionalized and such genres became established. And so throughout Card's book, he shows how in the 20th century, the professionalism of archaeology pushed paranormal and other types of theorists to the fringes of the discipline. The creation of disciplinary norms and the movement of archaeology into the orbit of academy meant that rationalist and materialist approaches were not only expected, but mandated. Yet the spooky elements of the archaeology are perpetuated in the popular reception of the discipline and through elements of the discipline that emerged before archaeology was recast as science fiction. Now, as I've read to you before here, in my own little book that's coming out, my illustrated book, I have let's see, I thought it was right here. Maybe not. Let's see. How to be an archaeologist. I have certain things in here that I have written and that are expressly scientifically archaeological and yet and scientific, by the way. Yet I incorporate some of the spirituality into it. Let's see if it pops up here. This file that I have. I don't think it does. Well, that's too bad. So I can find it in a different place because I want to read this one page to you about this because I think it's actually very interesting the way that this whole thing of blending archaeology with the supernatural, but at the same time converting archaeology to just a science has hurt it. We don't even consider, I had of this. One of them, the same guy that used to write about us, let me find this here for you. It goes like this. I got to open this up. Here we go. So it starts on this page. Okay. And I don't have the pictures here to show you, so it's an illustrated book. But it goes like this. It's about this kid who grows up after having found a pipe in the river as like a 10-year-old kid, and it piqued his interest in archaeological curiosities. And he goes to school, becomes an archaeologist in his adult life. And so I'm picking up this story later in the book where it says, a handful of years have now passed through your journal. Abu Simbel and Khufu only lent you a kernel of the grandeur that lies neath the sands neath your feet. The final step is begun for your beginning to complete. identified and applied and now signed with the ministry. You've been granted permissions to uncover history, a shovel in one hand and a trowel in the other, your third hand extended to a benefactor and sponsor. At long last you stand in Ra's blazing simmer, sinking your spade into your own quest for treasure. You won't find it in books. They don't teach it in school. The universities won't break from their cardinal rule that says it's all science, just history, nothing more. They give you lectures and letters, then matriculate you out the door. But it's there in that moment, after years of hard work, of reading, writing papers, and digging in the dirt, that you find yourself breathing the air of the ancients. You've moved rocks, sifted silt, and now here you face it. Eternal life, it was written, resides in the name. Remembrance and utterance is the name of that game. So you drop to your knees, assuaging your fears, and for the very first time in thousands of years, you gaze into eyes that shed only stone tears. Your fingers brush lightly on glyphs carved so bold, and there on the lintel where in antiquity was told the story of this man, now 3,000 years old. In the recounting of his life and his deeds of great fame lay the resurrection to be found only in his name. His face to your face, your words to his ears. You speak out his name not uttered in years, and the statue before you breaks free of its bonds, reconnecting with life in the light of the gods. Now, that is a fanciful telling of an archaeologist, but that he hasn't forgotten the other things too. He still remembers them and knows that there is more beneath the surface. It's not just what you learn in school. It's not just the things you need to get your degree, but it's the other stuff too. And that's what I think a little bit of what this guy is talking about. This reviewer says Spooky Archaeology is an important book, as public outreach in archaeology requires serious engagement with how the field is understood by non-specialists, by illustrating how archaeologists have been complicit, usually unwittingly, in rectifying these problematic notions. Card convincingly explores how these approaches can undermine the discipline's attempts at engagement from non- or anti-colonialist perspectives. So there you go. And the guy who reviewed this was Kevin Magoo, a McGeough. Magoo. Mr. Magoo, if you remember him, if you're old enough like me. He's a professor of archaeology in the Department of Geography at the University of Lethbridge. So that, I think, is a book that I'm going to have to get. I'm going to need to read that. So here's the big question for you all. Is archaeology, when all the spook stories rose up and the Victorians would have mummy unwrapping parlors and parties in their parlors? Do you remember hearing about that? The Victorians, the rich, would buy mummies from Egypt, and these archaeologists would make a huge amount of money bringing these back for the filthy rich who wanted them, and they would have mummy unwrapping parties in the parlor in tuxedos, and the way they dressed for a party in those days at the mansion. And but around all that grew these tales of the supernatural. And so what do you guys think of some of this? Do you think archaeology and the supernatural blend together well? Did the supernatural come out of attempting to colonize and imperialize small countries? Maybe so, to a certain extent. Does that mean none of it's true? Like I've written about when I wrote about Freud and Adler and the reptilians. I never really state in that book that I do not believe the reptilians could be a possibility. Just that here are some other more down-to-earth explanations for some of these stories. So, what are your thoughts? Let's take a little break here. Yeah, same coin, different side, says Sean. Let's take about a minute or two break. I'm going to run the end of the show and the beginning of the captain's cabin. And let's open up the call for calls to come in so you guys can talk about this. That's already 11:15, but that's because I started at 9:15, 15 minutes late. So let's go out to this, and we'll be right back. So everybody, you all sit tight.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid radio program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Dave, I love you, brother.
I miss you too.
I miss you too, I heard.
Yep,
Did you guys hear that?
I heard that.
I miss you, Dave. Yeah, we sure miss you, Uncle Dave. My brother and my friend, it's been almost a year since Dave's passing. It's at the end of June of last year. So there we go. And I picked up his voice, as you all know, and you've heard that little clip before, on the Spirit Box. So, and Sam has more than I have. And those contacts have kind of died down, but I think they were necessary at the times they came. So, yeah, you do too, Elderberry. So, that little contact from Dave, I believe it was Dave. I've had some skeptical friends of mine who are close to me, and they're good friends, dear friends. And they say, I can't believe the veracity of what you're saying. How can a little device pick up somebody's voice that's dead? And I said, I don't know. I really don't know. It's a mode of communication, though. And he says, I don't buy it. I don't buy that. Yet there I was that night asking if Uncle Dave was around. It was at the festival that we both loved. And I said, hey, if you're here, if you want to talk to us, you can. And nothing. And then I said, well, I love you, brother. And that's when the voice came, I miss you too. And then I looked up and Rainey said, I heard that. And she heard it as loud as I did. She was the one filming that. And then I said, I heard that too. Did you hear that? And on the heels of me saying that, he said it again. He either said, I miss you too, or I love you too. He said, I miss you too twice, or he said, I miss you too, I love you too. And so you can hear it's Dave's voice too. So there it is. And for all of you, don't get tired of this. I never do. I listened to it 10 times the other day. Listen to this one more time. It's 17 seconds. Tell me, and it's right as I hear it, there's another sound of like a that takes place on the device, but his voice, I miss you too, he says it right underneath that. Listen to this one more time. Listen. Dave, I love you, brother.
I miss you too.
I miss you too, I heard.
Yep,
Did you guys hear that?
I heard that.
I miss you, Dave. There it was again. If you didn't hear that clearly, I'll send it to you. You can watch it and listen to it. But that was Dave twice. So yeah, we miss him. He was always a regular on the captain's cabin, and like I say, the pain of it has subsided a great deal since last year. But I couldn't even talk about it before without it affecting me. So I miss Captain Big Beard. Arr. He was on right now with you. Yep, he would be here right now on this show. And Claudette hears it perfectly as well as Elderberry. Hey, I wanted to show you this. I mentioned this and it was sitting here. This is a cup. I did this up today. Rainey needed to have some extra space used up on some of the materials she was printing to run tumblers and mugs. And I said, I got a couple I want you to do. And I did this one up of that illustration I did of Spock. There it is. I'm trying to catch it without the light. So Spock, and it's much brighter in the artwork. I'm surprised it turned out as dark as it did. But then I've got the, and it's so reflective, it's hard to see. But I've got the Enterprise streaking across there. And it says flawlessly logical. That's my coffee is flawlessly logical. There's blue nebula back in there and stars, and it just did not print. It printed a little too dark, and I'm not sure why. But there, I was going to show that earlier. There's my Spock mug. So there you are. Anyway, there it is. Sean Stroik, yeah. We all miss Dave. So, Field Guy, YouTube sabotage. Steph Cuervo Queen. What happened to Steph? Why wasn't this stream showing up for me? What the hell? Oh, Steph, I got a really late start tonight. I've told a couple of times. I didn't get in here till about 10 minutes after 9, quarter after is when we actually started. And I put out the notification at quarter after. So you might not have gotten it. Because I started almost live right away. So once again, if anybody wants to call in, you may. There it is. It's already almost 11. If you want to call in and talk for a few minutes, we can do that. If you got some, we started 15 minutes late, so we could go until quarter after if we wanted to, or we can end at 11. We'll just see if anybody's up for calling in and talking tonight. Elderberry says he sparked my interest in art. I really liked his paintings. Yeah. Dave was somebody that I would look at his art and say, this sounds cruel, and I don't mean it sound this. I felt his art was a little substandard from an artistic point of view. Meaning, if I was a creative director of a company, I never would have hired him to illustrate. But he was a great muralist with me, and he did great paintings of his own. He was a little off on things. His perspectives weren't always right, but that was just my take. And he and I talked about it a lot. It wasn't that I disliked his work. I just didn't, I thought that he lacked a little something that he would have gained if he had kept painting. Now there's all those unfinished paintings. I don't know. I think his brothers kept them. I don't know. John, if you're out there, let me know. I got to find out. How you doing, JP?
Doing all right, man. How you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah, I figured I'd call in since you were, basically fishing for people to call in.
Yeah, well, I can cut us off in 3 minutes and we'll be done. When it's 11 o'clock.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if we can lure the professor out.
Just saying, if you guys want to call in, call in. If you don't, we'll wrap it. But the time is now. So
yeah, it's interesting that some people haven't heard of Cabinet of Curiosities.
Yes.
No, I don't. I don't have the kind of money to own a Victorian home or building that I have converted into a Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Right. But wouldn't it be fun?
Oh, it'd be very interesting. Very interesting.
I've run across a lot of things that I had a mannequin that was standing in my studio for years. It was a mannequin I picked up. It was gray and it was I had it before I met Rainey, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And I took that thing and I painted human features on it. I made him a redhead with stubble, and he had a scar, and but it was a skinny mannequin. But I gave him human eyes,
Yeah.
and painted his hands and his legs because I put him in my kilt, and my red coat uniform went on him. Although I
Right.
wasn't wearing it, and so he'd stand in my office with that, and we named him Gordon because Dave's Scottish character was his name was Gordon. What the hell was the last name? Something. And so I named him
Lightfoot?
Gordon. No,
No.
it had
No.
a Mac in it.
Oh,
So-
he didn't. He wasn't out there singing about wrecks on the Great Lakes.
No wrecks on the Great Lakes or stairways or sunrises or sundowns. So, but I had several people would comment on him. And I think was it psychological because people would have these things about him. They'd come into my studio and they're like, oh shit. And it would startle them. I thought somebody was standing there. No, that's just Gordon. And on Halloween, I would put him out in my front yard in my red coat and stand him out in the front yard in the dark. And
Sure, that went over well.
but people would come in, and I had somebody who was a psychic friend who came in with a friend of hers, and I wasn't there when she came over. She must have visited my wife, or we had her just go in and take a look at the mannequin if you want.
Yeah.
And she got creepy vibes off of him, and said, "There's something inhabiting that mannequin." And
Nice.
I was going to give it to John Zaffis, and who has his museum of curiosities.
Yeah.
And John Zaffis, folks, if you don't know, the nephew to Ed and Lorraine Warren, who has been the godfather of the paranormal for the last 3 to 4 decades now. And he's got to be in his 70s. I'm sure he's in his mid to late 70s now, by guessing. And but he started a museum in Connecticut where he lives.
Nice.
And he has a museum. He lived in a residential neighborhood on a bigger lot, and he built a barn out back to house his museum. He had to get it out of the house. It was getting too big. And he would bless things, and people would send him all what they felt was their cursed items or haunted items.
Right.
And so he was going to take this mannequin. You say pics where? That might have been answering to Steph. You could have screenshots to pick when he posted in the live stream. Can I have a picture too? Let's see. Somebody said something about a picture somewhere.
Yeah.
Was it
Of the museum.
Oh, of the museum, maybe. I don't know. So, or maybe
Gordon.
And I've got a picture of Gordon somewhere. So there's actually a picture of him. He's standing, leaning against the wall behind Rainey, sitting. And I'll have to find that picture.
Yeah, I have thought about getting busts to put or just heads to put my hats on.
Yeah.
And with stuff like my Raiders hat and stuff like that, it'd be cool to have a Harrison Ford head or something to put it on. But at the same time, I'm like, if I made them look real, somebody's going to come over one day and be like, why do you have a wall of severed heads?
A wall of heads? Oh, no. That's a hat rack.
Yeah, it's not what you think. I'm not weird, I promise. At least
that's
not
right,
in that way.
Right. But there was I wish I still had him. I actually gave him to my dad, who has his place down in Ohio. And his little it's not a thrift shop, it's an antique junk shop on his property, and it's roadside type of thing. and he wanted to put old military uniforms on it. So
Mhm.
he's got it. I sent that to him, 5-6 years ago. So we
Yeah.
got it out of the house. And Rainey always got creeped out by him too. So
Yeah, it's one of those things. Actually, the guy that I work with, who's the curator for the Heritage Center for the Cyberspace Capabilities Center, where I'm the historian, um, he's requested budget money to be able to kind of start redoing everything and making it more museum-like.
yes.
And he's got a he's got a museum company kind of thing where that's what they do. That's their gig.
Yes.
And all of that stuff. And I'm kind of wondering about what the budgeting is going to look like, because it's
Sure.
like, some of these things would look really cool if you had mannequins doing stuff. It add more the dynamic nature visually to the displays, which is always engaging.
Yes.
And I'm kind of like, we could probably go to the places where I get my reproduction World War II uniform items and stuff like that, and save a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Just send us the mannequins. We'll take care of the rest.
Send us the mannequin.
Yeah.
Throw me the whip. I'll throw you the mannequin.
Right. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to do that, because I know I'll help out with it. Probably not a massive amount, but enough.
Sure.
And that's actually something I would like to explore getting more into. Would be the museum side of things.
That would be very cool.
I just can't find any, official military DoD run museums where they're paying a docent, GS-12 pay.
Right.
Which kind of sucks, because I would sit in there in the museum from sun up to sundown, walking people around and be like, oh, so this over here, let me tell you about the story about this. Yeah. Like, I enjoy doing that stuff and getting people involved. So
yes.
But
now I have found one picture of Gordon.
Okay, here we go.
But
Gordon.
he's a little obscured in the background here.
Is he holding someone's face between two slices of bread and telling them that they're an idiot sandwich? Or
yes, something like that. I'm just going to type his name in here.
What are you?
Up at all?
You're an idiot sandwich.
Yes. I'm going to see if he comes up at all in other things. Gordon. No. If I've got him in different file folders. But I got this one. So I will save this one and I'll show you. This is Rainey and me. From a series of pictures we took on the webcam, where she's licking my face and all. This is 20 years ago. So that series, her in the green sweater, you might remember them if you're familiar with my stuff. But this is Gordon. This is the supposedly haunted Gordon.
The haunted Gordon mannequin.
Yes. So let's see. Let me make sure I can find him again. Okay. I got to see where he is, where I've just stored him, and let's upload him and see what you all think. And again, I've got better pictures of him than this, but this is what I've got that I can get my hands on right now. Gordon, the haunted mannequin. Let's see. He is going to be in here, and we're going to look for date modified. There it is. He's loading up right now, and it's only showing him from about mid chest up. And I also had a Star Trek phaser in his hand. So here he is. That's him in the background. So that's Gordon. He's wearing my red coat. He's got the blue bonnet on his head. He's holding a Star Trek phaser in his flexible fingers. And so that's Gordon, the haunted. And he was wearing a kilt. And he was a bitch getting into that coat. His arms detached. I had to take off his arms, and the one arm is permanently bent. It's like,
Mhm.
hey, I'm a fashion model. It was for a store. And
Yeah.
and so I had to work that coat around his elbow and all of that, and then work the arm back into its socket,
Yeah.
and so on and so on. Well, where is he right now? He's at my dad's outside of Cincinnati, closer to Peebles, Ohio, near the Serpent Mounds is where my dad lives. And
Okay.
he's got a roadside. If you're going down the country road, and there's a big sign that says antiques and military antiques, and so my dad's a big collector of military antiques. That's his
Well,
shop.
my grandmother on my mom's side lived forever in Hillsboro,
Yeah,
so which is right close to Serpent Mounds.
sure.
In fact, driving through Hillsboro, you see a little, the Brown historic site,
Yes, my dad
Serpent
mentions
Mounds that way.
Hillsboro a lot. Now that you mention it,
Well, next time I am out that way, I might have to see about keeping an eye out and
that would be
stopping
kind
in.
of cool.
Be like, I watch your son's show.
Yeah.
Be like, what?
What? Or as my dad would say, he or you. And my dad's got that deep Eastern Ohio hill accent, kind of. So,
See, does he say things like "warsh"?
probably I don't recall. I owe him a call, by the way. Now that I'm talking about it, I haven't talked to him for a while for no reason other than I look up and I go, "Why haven't I talked to my dad for so long?"
Mhm.
So I need to call him now that we're talking about him. So, and he hasn't called me. He might think I'm mad at him or something because I haven't called him for a while, and I was usually more regular. And I've gone a few weeks. We haven't talked, so I need to do that.
Yeah, yeah. I usually get a phone call from one of my parents every couple of weeks if I haven't called them in
Yeah,
between. And they're like, just checking on you. Hadn't heard from you in a while. I'm like, oh yeah, sorry, I'm just busy operating.
and my dad does that too. It's kind of like now the difference here is that I did not grow up knowing him. I never knew him until I was 30,
Mhm.
and our relationship forged after that. And so talking to each other was not an ordinary thing.
Right.
So, but in recent years, we've gotten to do it a
Mhm.
lot more.
Yeah.
So I need to. And he sent me something in the mail, a dream catcher,
No.
and I don't know. I don't think he made it. I think it was store bought, and he sent that, and so that's interesting. I need to call him and say,
Yeah, I
"Hey,
actually
I got that
I
dream
found a dream catcher that I had hanging up in the house back in North Dakota today while I was going through boxes.
nice,
So it's
nice,
kind of funny that you mentioned that. It's like, oh, dream catchers popping up places.
yeah,
All right,
yeah,
interesting.
synchronicity." So,
Yep.
oh, that was
Yep.
the picture that he's in. Oh, I was just scanning as we're talking, see if there were other pictures, and there's not. I've got better pictures of him, so I got like full-bodied pictures of him in the back of my office. Oh, no, there's one. It's on my Facebook. Not of him. Just the other day, I posted a picture yesterday, a
Mm,
picture of a friend's book, and that I was reading like 12 years ago. I reviewed his book, and there's a picture of me reading his book. Hold on.
there's Gordon over your shoulder.
Yeah, he's in the back corner. Hold on. There he is. There's a little more of him there to look at. Let's see. This is kind of fun. It's a small picture, so it's not very. There was a day 12, 15 years ago where we would do internet work, website work, and we were just taught everything's got to be small and 72 DPI.
Right.
That's what we did. And so all my old pictures that I've saved are like small and 72 DPI, and they just suck. So
Yeah.
Here, let's see. This is a much better picture of it, but the resolution sucks. So let's save this as, I'm just going to call it Gordon. And we'll put him over here so I can grab him quickly. Gordon. Here we go. Let's load him up. You get a slightly longer view of him, but again, low res and in the background. But here we go. Slides, my computer, upload. Desktop is where I put him. And look for Gordon. Where are you, laddie? Let's see. Date modified. Date. How about date added? Boom. Well, I could have sworn this is where I put him. I just saved him in here, and now he's not here.
Yeah, it was interesting while you're doing that.
there he is.
I also thought it was interesting how you had people attacking your book.
Oh yeah.
And it's one of those things that I don't understand. You know, it's one thing if you were gallivanting and flitting all over the internet, spreading, some sort of, horrific thing, right? To where people would come in and attack you. But a book?
Yeah. Well, this is a guy who's his I don't know if it was his livelihood, or it's still grayed out. I don't know why. I don't know if it was his livelihood or what it was, but it was his task in life to be able to take down people like me, like Giorgio Tsoukalis, like Eric Von Daniken, like Scott Walter, America Unearthed, which is probably the least weird of all the shows. And Scott didn't put up with any BS from him either. Yeah. He was like, dude, you can talk about me. I'm going to talk right back to you.
Yeah.
And how come you come in here and talk so much? Well, because you keep talking about me. And yeah, but you're right about that. It's what is it that what did he find that was so fascinating to talk about? It gave him fodder.
And the other people glomming onto it too. It doesn't make any sense. And that's the thing is, it's not like you wrote a book supporting fascism and the tossing of burlap sacks full of kittens off of overpasses or bridges into rivers.
Right.
You just explored a particular aspect of something that some people ascribe to, some people don't, and you talk about it.
Yeah.
You don't even express. I believe this is what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally just I'm telling you the data. Here's what the legends say. Here's what the all of these. Take the information and do with it what you will.
Right.
And why you got to attack somebody over that?
That was
never makes sense.
I had I've talked about it before too. P.Z. Myers, who known atheist, evolutionary biologist, TED speaker, all of this stuff, and he was the one that stood up against Fingerprints of the Gods. Why am I slipping on his name? Oh, come on. British and done stuff with Randall Carlson.
Computer.
Graham Hancock. Jeez. Okay. And he's the one who tried to get Graham Hancock kicked off of TED, which he accomplished for a while, and then they brought him back in. It was dumb. Here's Gordon again.
Yeah.
There he is in the background. That's him loaded up with all my gear. So I was There's a picture again, low resolution, but Robbie Thomas.
Sans phaser.
Yeah, no phaser in this shot. Different house. So it's an earlier shot. But yeah. There he was. That was 12 years ago. That was taken. So something like that. Yeah, that's when Robbie's book came out. So get rid of that. So yeah, this guy's name, I'll just name him because he's a public figure. Jason Colavito.
Colavito.
Colavito. Jason Colavito. And even after we had what seemed like a very good conversation on the phone, he went right back to it. He was a dick again after that.
Well, and it would be one thing if on the phone he was like, "Hey, look, man, it's just my shtick. Nothing against you, so don't."
And he didn't.
Don't take offense.
Yep, and he didn't do that. And,
how long ago was that?
That would have been 2013-ish.
Okay.
2014.
So people were starting to get on the whole, getting clicks and getting whatever and likes and all that. I mean, that's the thing is the more you get into a giant argument thread, and people see things and then click on something and stuff like that, the more it impacts the algorithm and influences what people see and what you see.
Dumb. And he did a lot of that stuff. I haven't heard much about him. The last I heard from him was just before. I remember it was at the same time when Rush Limbaugh was leaving Twitter. In that period of time, I just remember because that all came up. But I put up that little clip that I read from my book tonight about the archaeologist discovering something, and it's all metaphoric language. The statue before him comes to life. Not really. It didn't really happen even in the book. It was just he comes to life. You breathed the life back into him because you've mentioned the name. The power of resurrection, eternal life was in the name. And that's all I'm putting forward. And he and some other archaeologists were ridiculing me online on Twitter about that passage of the book. And they were, and that was just, maybe it wasn't that long ago, a couple of years ago. And I basically told him to fuck off. I've had my rounds with you. Fuck off. And you know what they do? They go back and he obviously can't handle criticism, and stuff like that. And I don't really care.
And there is admittedly something satisfying about like getting a last word in or things like that. Like I've gotten into some discussions, if you will, on pages on Reddit. And talking about state things, local things, stuff like that. And there is admittedly something satisfying about when somebody comes at you with something and then you hit them back with here's the real numbers, guy.
Right.
And then nothing. Flat line. It's like, okay. But no witty retort.
And of course, no counter or rejoinder or argument I made was valid ever to him or his followers. There was one guy, we actually found him. I found this was a delectable piece of detective work, I must say. Deliciously. And there was some guy that called himself something like Phantom Menace or something. It was some weird, stupid name like that.
Yeah.
And he was the one that was coming up with stuff from my past records. And
like what kind of Cape Crusader do you think you are if you're going in to the past records of a dude who wrote a book on a topic that you're not really interested in or care anything about?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
And the purpose for that. It's the same thing you see going on. Not to compare myself, but like the trials we just saw happening, all this stuff nowadays is
Yeah.
just an evolution of all that minor stuff from a few years ago. It's just,
Yeah.
oh, you know what? We have to uncover everything of yours that we think is wrong. About,
Right.
oh, look, you wrote a bad check in 1994. I did.
Yeah.
You know, kind of thing. And, you
Well,
know,
and then when they bring it up, it's like they're like, ha ha, this
we've got
fresh
you.
new information of the nefariousness of it. It's like,
I know, it was
it
ridiculous.
was like 30 years ago, brother. What do you even like? Do you understand the amount of life that has occurred
Yeah.
in that span? Be
Since
it,
that
you know,
happened, yeah.
right. It's like the level of learning and maturity that has taken place over the course of 30 years, the experiences gathered that, you know,
Yep.
shape and mold, you know, views and opinions. Like, come off it, dude.
Yeah. So that's what they did, and that's what they were
Yeah.
all about. And it was pretty dumb for a while there. Oh, they really got on John because he had a logo for his I can't remember what it was called. A little organization that he did.
Yeah.
I just saw somebody flash on and flash off out in my chat area. Their picture. I caught it out of the corner of my eye, so I don't even know who it was. But he used in this symbol, it was, and I made up a new one for him, but it was a ring with a couple of wings coming out, and he had symbols from the Nazi ring around it because they meant something different. Esoteric symbols.
Yeah.
And of course, you couldn't convince anybody who was trying to convince everybody else that John was a Nazi and a fake, and I was a this and a that.
Oh no, there's runes.
Yes.
You must be a Nazi.
So I redid John's logo at his request for that, and it was actually cooler and classier than the first one. But we took the symbols out, and he did something different. Let's use these symbols instead.
Right.
And so we did that. But Colavito it was like at one point I said, have you seen his updated logo? Oh, he took those all down because of my criticism. I said, if you want to pat yourself on the ass for that, go right ahead. You know, so that kind of thing. And it was just like foolish. After a while, it became stupid. And Scott Walter got into it with him too, head to head for quite a while. And finally went, you know what? I'm done. I'm done wasting my time.
Yeah.
It's casting your pearl before swine. So anyway, there we go. I just see Robert Bauer just said, what circle is this conversation looping in?
Whatever circle we want it to, Prof.
Yeah, whatever circle we want, says Jason.
It's our conversation, man.
I was just going to say we're going to wrap it up now.
Yeah, well, that's why I made sure I came at the end to get that extension in, because all I've heard is a bunch of kind of bloviating about this and that and some other nonsense that's not connected to something else, which is
what
why
color eyes do I have?
Which is why I thought I gotta ask which one's going on here. But I also thought, well, I haven't tried my phone on this.
Oh, look at that! Yeah, your backgrounds are different there.
Yeah, well, this is I'm in the living room. So I'm sitting at my little coffee table with my big old screen here watching some Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I thought, is Scotty on tonight? I went on there and by God, popped right up.
Well, it's Monday. Yeah.
It is Monday.
And I don't remember what day it is.
That reminds you, you're watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's where something like this came from. Do you remember the movie Aliens? Everybody does.
Look into my eyes.
Look into my eyes, Hicks.
Apone, Sergeant Apone.
Oh, napalm, yeah. So look into my
Yeah, no, so I thought, well, I'll go ahead
You
and
want
try
me to
to.
get you your slippers? Oh, gee, would you, Sarge?
would you, Sarge?
Look into my eye.
Another glorious day in the Corps.
Every meal is a banquet. Every paycheck a fortune.
He sits
Every
up.
formation of full parade.
He sits up after being woken out of cryogenic sleep, and he's laying there, and his eyes open up. You see him sit up, and he's got his cigar is still in his hand from cryogenic sleep. He sits up and he goes, "Another glorious day in the Corps." So great movie. So that's what we're talking about. So
I couldn't make heads or tails out of where the hell you started or where you were going in the middle of all
Jesus,
this.
there wasn't a start or a finish. There was
Yeah,
a start and there was no planned program, so it was all from my ass.
Now it's just two dudes talking. That's all it is. Well, now three.
Again.
That reminds me of a song from John Ward. He and Rocky and I were driving to this place in southern Minnesota to investigate. And John says, he just starts singing. It's about the three of us. He just goes, three men naked, three men naked in the bar and naked. There are three men talking in the bar are naked. Three. And Rocky looks in the rearview mirror and he's kind of like, John, I'm going to reach back there and slap you into awakeness. So, three men naked.
Hey,
that's the next show, by the way, folks. Wednesday night with We Three.
Yeah.
We
three men. Nobody needs to see that.
We three men of disoriented R.
Yes. Oh, Elderberry just said spoiler alert. So.
Hey, how's my mic? I'm using my Bluetooth headphones, so it sounds really great here.
Fuzzy, but you're good.
Yeah,
slightly fuzzy and good. I hear that a lot. I hear you
5x5,
but not bad. Not discernible to the uneducated ear.
There you go. Well, that's a good thing because this head wrap. So this is a Bluetooth, and it's a regular head wrap, and it's got speakers. Yeah, it's got speakers in the thingies. So the thingies go with the speakers go over your earlobes and stuff. So oh my God, it sounds incredible.
So hey, Prof.
Yeah.
Step away from Temu, okay? Just step away from the Temu app.
Who's?
I know you're shopping like you're a billionaire, but no. Just
These things are $30. I've got 7 or 8 pairs of Bluetooth. I've paid each one of them twice that, and this is the one that sounds the best, which is amazing.
Oh, right on.
And I've got induction. I've got in ear, over ear, round ear, and this is more like the headphones I use in the studio. You want complete over ear when you're listening in headphones. You don't want something that's smashing on it or has leakage as far as sound.
Leakage.
I think we
hate headsets with leakage.
Well, that is one of the conditions when you have some kind of audio deficiency. And our pharmaceutical friends have come up with all kinds of really cool stuff to alleviate some of these conditions and provide you with all kinds of relief for the tinnitus, not being able to hear things, can't remember shit, and all that kind of
stuff. No,
the only thing is,
you two keep talking. It's past my pee time. I'm going to go.
Okay.
The only thing is, in all of those, with all of those remedies for all these different conditions, there's a fair amount of severe and serious side effects, and these side effects can range from all kinds of different conditions of memory loss, heart palpitations, thoughts of suicide, anal leakage. I mean, the range
isn't that the low-fat potato chips made with Olean or Olestra?
Yeah, I think they're definitely in on it. Yeah, for sure. I mean, because it seems to me that there's something afoot.
And you're talking about medications.
Well, you start with the food, then you go to the pharma. the food's poison, but the pharma has the remedies for the poison in the food, and those pharma remedies have all these interesting side effects that I don't know. If I had any of these conditions these people have dreamed up, these
Yeah.
combo conditions, right? They package all kinds of shit and say, well,
Right.
if you've got, and you sit there and you go, well, I got that one, and that one. Not sure about that one. Maybe I shouldn't, I should get in there and find out so I can alleviate some of these. But then all these other things show up.
Well,
And then
you're talking
you
about
end
the
up you
headsets.
end up in the pharma loop.
Yeah, you're talking about the headsets and whatnot, and the things that they've got going on now. So I've got a good buddy of mine back in Grand Forks. He's vet like me. Well, he's still getting ready to retire, but definitely has the whole tinnitus thing going on. And we constantly would throw the what jokes at each other, and but he actually yeah, right. There's an audiologist in town there in Grand Forks that has started using utilizing with his patients a type of hearing aid that when you put it in, they have a machine and everything that they get it set up to and all that, and they tune it right to various frequencies that you're having problems with the tinnitus in. And it will actually cancel out the ringing, and it retrains your brain to basically disregard, if you will, that particular frequency range where the hairs in your cochlea that pick up the frequency vibrations and transmit that signal to your brain, which then processes it into sound. Well, when certain of those hairs die in certain ranges because you've had high exposure to those frequencies, they lay over flat and they stay there and it dies. And so what ends up happening is your brain is trying to fill in the frequency range that you're no longer able to pick up, and it creates a ringing. And so with these hearing aids and how they can tune them, it will basically retrain your brain actively to filter out that frequency and just ignore that particular frequency range, and it will completely kill your tinnitus. And you wear them long enough.
Tinnitus.
Say what?
I didn't know that's what you were talking about. I need to kill my tinnitus.
What?
Huh?
Huh?
See, I think that the whole
So it's not all
tinnitus
bad.
thing. Oh no, I think the whole tinnitus thing, and I'm trying to get this phone stand set so I can just kind of chill and look like I'm actually in the middle of
Crap,
the.
we're supposed to be done already.
Well, that's not my fault.
Well, you're the one who called in.
So what about the
how is it
tinnitus
not?
thing?
Hey, I didn't put the link up.
Link for tinnitus?
Yeah, yes, for tinnitus.
Oh,
Tonight, us. Yeah. That's
Oh, come on, bring it
Oh
home.
wow.
Group hug.
That's a dad joke even I wouldn't tell.
Yeah.
It's better than some I've heard.
You know, the
okay,
nice
that's
thing
good.
about dad jokes is they when they're best when they're spontaneous, and there's
Yeah.
like this little nugget into the middle of the thing. You go, oh, really? And you go, yeah, really. Yeah, that was good. I want some of that.
But so the tinnitus thing you were gonna say.
I was going to say, yeah, the tinnitus thing is, I think, along the lines of what you're talking about. It is an imbalance of frequencies that are firing off with extra input and effort, encouragement, and that frequency set will change. You can change it that's what the whole tuning fork and
My wife
singing
sent
bowls
me
and I mean all this frequencies will all change that.
Do you know you have rocks in your ears? Crystals? That they're there in everybody's ears? My wife sent me this thing on this, and some woman that was showing a demonstration of how you have to tip your head certain ways and then back, and it's like realigning these things that sit in your ears naturally. It's like, and she was showing little diagrams. It almost looked like sand, like I don't know, like sand in a glass or something, where you've got a glass of water, but then a few little grains of sand in the bottom. You move it, and they're like floating around, and then they settle again. And there was something about that. I got to look at that again and see what that was. And
Sounds like a hallucination of some
it's
kind.
supposed to be you realign those things or get them back to where they're supposed to be by certain tippings, and that your tinnitus goes away. And I'm like, really? I said, I've never really heard that. So I wonder if anybody heard of that, but
I've never heard of that. That's an interesting one. But yeah, well, and it's just interesting to see that, people out there are figuring these things out. And at some point in the future, anybody who's been around tanks and helicopters and machine guns and explosions for extended periods of time, have worked as roadies for a band, all of that stuff, and their hearing is shot because all it does is ring, would be able to get past that.
Yeah. I don't know what mine's from. It started a couple of years ago. I just hear it's just like started almost like buzzing. It was like bzzz.
I recommend exploring some microdosing, particularly with some psilocybin.
That's what Rainey said.
And see what.
Here's what I want to know, and somebody maybe can explain. I know there's a documentary on Netflix that talks about it and things like that. Now I understand the idea, behind the process of doing microdosing to deal with things like PTSD. You have trauma memories from your experiences or things like that, and they've been doing this to some pretty good success with veterans coming out of global war on terror. And but apparently you can also use it to treat like depression and not like traumatic depression, but like my brain just doesn't make enough dopamine or norepinephrine or whatever, and I don't understand how it changes those mechanics. I understand the psychedelic allowing you to examine the issues that the traumatic experiences and confront those and process them differently, but I don't understand how it's like if your pump's broken, man. Yeah, it's not going to go in there and magically put a new push rod in the pump so that the pump is putting out the proper level of chemicals.
Well, the thing is, and so you're right. It's a good question from the observational perspective, but what you need to add to that is that the reason that the psilocybin, the mescaline, all of the plant medicine works, okay, is that they deal on a real individual experience level. Some have, and ayahuasca and DMT are much more intense than just doing a psilocybin. But psilocybin is where the most of the research that has been done on PTSD that you were talking about, that's where that has come from. But so what is it treating? It's treating a psychological experience, a psychological condition.
Right.
There could be some chemical, electrical combination of the two, the biology. There's all kinds of things that happen that intensify that psychological experience. Well, that's no different than depression, addiction.
Well, right, but if you have
any kind of preference, peccadillo, and that you have you focus on.
Yeah,
That's
but
the same emotional thing, and that's what the psilocybin does.
if you have a broken fuel pump, so to speak, to put it into dumbed
What
down
are you
terms,
using that as a metaphor for?
I'm talking literally
what is
your
the pump and why
endocrine.
is it broken?
I'm talking about your endocrine system,
Is that the pump?
everything that produces the brain chemicals and the hormone levels, the
Yeah.
physical thing. If
Yeah.
you have whatever pump, whatever organ, whatever organelle, whatever that is putting those things out, right, has been busted since time immemorial on you.
Yeah.
All
Yeah, there's
right.
a lot of that.
Okay. Like, I don't like, and believe me, I want it to actually work because there's a lot of people out there that I want to see get better. Right. And there's people.
Well, all the
close to me.
data that I've seen unequivocally says
Right,
that
but
this
how
is
does
not only working, but it's across all those other things that I mentioned.
But that
Depression,
doesn't
and
make
psychosomatic.
sense. If you're suffering depression that is due directly to traumatic experience,
Yeah.
right? I can
Yeah.
understand that because it allows
Yeah.
you to go in and address the individual
That's the
experience.
biggest extreme, right? Would you
Right.
agree that that is an extreme, and if it can affect that, what are the chances of it? If it can affect the extreme, what about all the other shit long before the extreme?
Well,
What about all
right,
these
but that's the thing
psychosomatic
is,
depression?
if you've got something that is literally your wiring is fucked up, not your experiences that have taught your body to be all like, whenever somebody does something nice to you or something like that. And yes, I'm exaggerating with things, but like literally, you have faulty wiring that causes you to be depressed because your body literally is not capable of producing
Right.
enough dopamine, enough
Yeah.
norepinephrine.
There's a
you're not,
electrical, chemical, biological imbalance.
right. That
You
is
know-
that is a physical thing, not a
Yeah.
experiential thing. How would the microdosing, how would the psychedelics actually be able to address that? Because I worry, my concern would be there's a lot of people who would go to seek help that if they were in the typical things of I've dealt with childhood traumas, I've dealt with combat trauma, I've dealt with horrible car accident trauma, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
That has led to all these depressive states. You're going to have people that go to do this and they're going to be like, okay, cool, I'm going to come out of here better, or at least better than I was, if not, fixed. And then it's like,
Well,
sorry, dude.
well, yeah.
Your alternator's shot, man. Like
what you're describing to me is a plausible and probably very common set of circumstances about not having the ability to grab any kind of control and influence a positive reaction to a state of biological chemical existence that's out of balance. You first have to know what is parts of it are out of balance and why.
right.
And so if you're not looking at the nut of the nugget,
Yeah.
then all you're doing is bouncing around and parrying around it and navigating and doing your own dance around your own dumpster fire. But when you realize that you are the one that has that focus, and it's a matter of how you perceive that focus and how you pursue that focus that makes the difference.
I think you're missing my point. Don't pick up the spliff again. I want to make sure that you're.
Dude, if I didn't get your point on the last one, I'm going to make sure that I get it this time.
So, okay. But it's like
I'm listening.
What I'm talking about is an actual literal physiological problem. Like I've got a bad valve in my heart, or I have a whatever, and it was a birth defect, it's a wiring thing. How is that?
Well, that's other modalities that will be more specific to that. But
that's what I was getting
the
at.
psilocybin will ease the acceptance and how that system is administered. I mean,
For how
there is
long?
a.
Or is it something you got to keep doing?
It's not a.
Individual results may vary.
Well, no. Well, you have to think of it differently than
Okay,
right
what?
now. We get these prescriptions and these pharmaceuticals that take 2 every 12 hours or 1 every month or whatever the hell it is.
Well, right.
And there's some kind of like major dose or regular dose that you get.
Yeah.
When you use plant medicine, it's not that way. Yes, there are, don't do too much of it, but
Right.
it's basically this plant has an effect that's positive in this direction under these conditions.
And I get,
and that's been known for millennia, which is one of the things that really pisses me off about how much control we, the people, have given to those who have purposely gone about and not done what their responsibilities with an idea and intent of being in our best interest. That, you can look at all these folks and you can get everybody some shit and go, that guy's an asshole, that guy's an idiot, that guy's scary, that guy's creepy, this is a monster, whatever the hell you want to put on it, and go rub it all over your face and go jump around with your like-minded friends and have your little oil and paint by numbers party, because it's nothing of that is sustainable, because it's not definable enough and to be repeatable enough that it's
paint
going
by
to be
numbers is incredibly definable.
Are you talking about with finger paints?
No, man. There's some sort of box with a number in it, and you put the color there. It's very clearly defined.
There is.
And the color.
My thing is I just, so someone very close and very special to me has considered going out to one of the few places here stateside to try to pursue treatment of this nature, to deal with their issues.
Treatment of what nature? Of psilocybin?
Yeah, the
Plant medicine?
Those kinds of things.
Cool.
Right.
Yeah.
And I am supportive in them trying to figure out how to effectively deal with the issues they're having, because I very much want them to have a very full and healthy life. And but I have questions. I have concerns about it. Not so much.
You sound like you have some drug paranoia concepts about the use of things that have an effect.
It's not.
So
let me ask. It's not drug paranoia. I mean, other than the fact that like I have spent a large portion of my life having to do things like take ADHD meds and whatnot. What it is more about is I want to understand, because like I said, and maybe I just think of things too mechanically. Okay. If
you do have
a faulty
JP, I got to tell you do have a bit of a clench going on.
I'm leaning on my counter. So I'm supporting part of my body weight. That would be.
I'm seeing some clenchage going on there.
Okay.
Well, now here, I understand what you're saying, and you are too mechanical because you got too much of the military process model system thing going on, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that I think, applying it to this idea of having this alternative medicinal therapy and approach. Are you aware of ayahuasca?
Yeah, I'm aware of ayahuasca.
And Vedic.
Yeah.
Okay. So I became a shiatsu practitioner back in '85. That's how I met the mother of my children.
Shiatsu practitioner.
Why does this
I work
not
on
surprise
small
me?
dogs. Boy, that's Shih Tzu.
Nice. No, shiatsu is Japanese for acupressure, as opposed to acupuncture. We use the same meridians, points, and all of that.
You just apply pressure.
Because I can't do needles. Needles and me are not friends, and we never have and never will be. So but I wanted to learn Chinese medicine. So we learned herbology, kinesiology, traditional Chinese medicine,
Yeah.
effleurage, all of the massage techniques, all of the meridians.
Empennage. Why are we talking about the tail of an aircraft?
Was he actually listening? Is that how he caught that?
Yeah.
I think so.
I was just making a joke. That's all.
Yeah. So my point is
Pardon me
that
while I have my late night snack.
all of these other modalities of health and wellness and balance of the being,
Right.
balancing the biology, balance the electrochemical and biological soup that we are, that manifests who he is.
Yeah.
That knowledge and all of that is the balancing of the systems, a la what's known also as like the chakras, the Wei Chi
Right.
and Tai
But
Chi.
all of the Vedic
prana,
medicine,
right? These
all
are
of the ayahuasca, all of the the balancing of chakras, all of
Ayurvedic
this stuff.
was one I was thinking.
Ayurvedic,
Go
sorry. All of that stuff cannot fix, for instance, a faulty heart valve. It
Right.
can't do it.
Which is what I have.
Didn't
It
say
can't
that.
do it. Right, and that's what
didn't
I'm
say that.
talking about. That's what I'm
But-
getting at with
But
dealing
it
with the
might be thinking
microdosing.
something different than it is.
So I want to know, do you realize, and I think this is what your question is, you're asking about the microdosing and being involved in and introduced to the heart valve problem. Do I think
no,
that, do I
not
think
the
that
heart
there,
valve problem. The actual physiological. There is a biomechanical, if you will, physiological problem where your pituitary gland, your endocrine system, whatever,
Yeah.
etc., is incapable of
Mhm.
producing enough of a brain chemical to ensure that you're having the proper brain responses and all the proper, firing across synapses and all of the, mood stabilization and things like that. It can't fix a literal physical problem. It can help you deal with traumatic problems because you now can examine it
if
in a
you're
different
talking
way.
specifically about the psilocybin and the mescaline, you are
Right.
absolutely correct. That's not the claim, though. The claim is, or the supporting thing of what it really does, is it
Mhm.
provides a space mentally to manage and deal with all of the rest of it in a different way.
Okay.
The majority of the majority of the health system is designed to treat symptoms, not causes.
Mhm.
And the problem about finding the right cause is it's not holistic. The
Right.
science, because it doesn't incorporate the ether, which is what the most common use is spirit or soul, this space that we exist in, none of that is ever considered in Western allopathic medicine. That's not how they think. That shit does not exist.
And we're going to have to talk about this some night.
Oh shit! All right, you're getting the cue, JP. It's time for you to wrap up.
Yeah, JP.
I've
We've been
talked
going almost
the
3
least
hours.
out of this,
And
just so you know, Professor.
so I'm going to wrap this. And
All right.
it's not that I'm not interested in this topic. It's that I'm just bored right now with it. No, I'm tired with it. Let's do it when we can flesh it out a little better, rather than we're doing this little bit of this and little bit of that and let's organize this, and we'll talk about it one of these nights in sincerity. As for now, I'm going to call it quits for tonight.
Well, I'm glad I had a couple of minutes to slide in here and try to spin a couple of things around, because
That's all right. I'm glad you did for the last 35 minutes.
If you're not sticking your finger in it, then you're not stirring it up.
Yep.
Who told me that? Oh, never mind. So, well, I missed my kiss from my wife tonight. Oh, if you all missed it, we had rainy sighting tonight. She was here for a good 15, 20 minutes, I think. And about 3 hours ago, almost 3 hours ago.
Yep.
So she told me on the way out, I said, give me a kiss. She's going to bed. She said, I'll kiss you later. And I went, oh, hello.
Go. Yeah.
But she's been
So
asleep
why
for
didn't you
2
just
hours.
shut this down an hour ago, man?
She's been asleep for 2 hours. So, it's always good. I have advice for you, gentlemen.
Uh-oh.
The best things to do is if you want to kiss and your wife's sleeping, you do this. Wake up! I'm here for my kiss.
I don't think that go over well.
I think I'd get one in the kisser is what I'd get. So
Yeah, I was going to
All right.
ask you what's your score on that? How's that going?
things have changed so much since we were younger. And this wasn't. We've been together almost 20 years now, but 19 years. But there was a point when I was writing the reptilian book, which I brought up tonight, and I've mentioned this before. I was reading. I was up late. It was about 2 a.m, and I was reading out of. I think the book. I thought it was right there, and I might be wrong. Nope. I was just going to grab it and show it off. But a book on modern translations of Mesopotamian cuneiform tablets. And I was reading The Tale of Atrahasis, written some 5,000 years ago, 4,500 years ago, something like that. And it was so fascinating and I was laying in bed reading this, and Rainey was sound asleep. And I go, it's about 2 a.m. I go, Rainey. And she goes, what? I got to read you something. What? I said, ancient cuneiform. And she sat up, much to her credit. Okay, now this is 15 years ago in our marriage. She does one of these in bed. Cool. Read it. And I'm like, yes. Here it goes. Listen to this.
Nice.
And then I finished. I go, wasn't that fascinating? And she goes, oh, fascinating. She was, I think, mimicking the Angelina Jolie line from one of her Tomb Raider movies. Somebody said something about something inane, her assistant, and she goes, fascinating. So I think that's what Rennie was doing. And then she went back to sleep. I didn't get a kiss that night either, come to think of it. So, oh well. And on that note, Vril, says Sean Stroik. Sean, what are you doing here this late? Vril. Yes, thank you. What was his name? Lord, who wrote about Vril? Oh, good grief. Is it my memory for names is for shit these days. I got to tell you, Lord something starts with a B. He was credited with writing really the first science fiction novel in the 1870s. What did you say, Jason?
Byron?
No. No,
I think I know who you're talking about, but
Lord, and he had one of those, I think a hyphenated last name, or one of the, like Lord Beckman Frankfurt, I guess. And I can't think of what it was. And but he wrote about Vril. Vril was this mystical. Hitler even looked for the stuff. He wrote the science fiction novel about this race.
Yeah, wasn't that Maria Orzik
or something?
It was like Maria Orzik or something that was the head of the Vril and ran all that. It was like a sisterhood with a bunch of long-haired women who had
Bulwer-Lytton. Bulwer-Lytton.
Yeah, that thing
was the guy's name, Lord Bulwer-Lytton, and he wrote about Vril. And I can't think of what the name of his book. I think it was The Secret of Vril or something, but they renamed it. That's what I was thinking.
Little fuzzy things.
No, it was an energy source.
Multiply when they eat.
That's Yeah, that's Ribbles.
Yeah,
The Coming Race or something like that. Here it is. Vril, The Power of the Coming Race, originally published as The Coming Race, is a novel by Edward Bulwer Lytton, published anonymously in 1871. And it was stuff that, like, Madame Blavatsky latched onto his story as if it was true. You know, those kinds of things where you hear these stories, these tales told, and you go, well, what if that was written on a real thing? You know, type of thing. So Bulwer Lytton, fantastic. And John Ward, he was out here, and we were not gay, but we went antiquing together when he was here once. And we were both dressed in our tweed jackets and fedoras, and he had his umbrella over his arm and a cravat. I'm sure everybody thought we were quite the nice couple. But we found these volumes of Bulwer Lytton. They were about this big, really oversized, and about that thick. There were like 7 of them or something. And John bought one of them. And forgot it here, but then he managed to get his hands back on it. Oh well, whatever. That's neither here nor there. It's an anecdotal story. Who cares? Because
gentlemen, it is way past your bedtime. I'm just getting my day started, and I don't want to keep you guys from your beauty sleep because I know
you one of those guys who
you
sleep
probably have not
afternoon?
been keeping
Like
up on your
14-year-old
man
son?
naps. I'm thinking the man naps is missing on you two.
Yeah, today it was.
Well, you know, back when I
Well, it's
was still in
midnight
the
here.
army and I was a
Only
warrant
8
officer, I
o'clock
was
your
entitled to my
time.
woman. A warrant officer mid-afternoon nap. That's what I always took.
Oh man, there is nothing like the midday man nap.
That's right.
I mean, you have got it. It's interesting how something that you rebel against so much when you were young becomes one of your best friends when you get older.
I know. And at the same time of day, you know, it was always.
All right. Well, I'm pretty
Rainey left
flexible.
today. She had some errands to run, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to sit and eat lunch, and then I'm going to go back down and work." And she was like, "No, you're not. You're going to fall asleep and take a nap on the sofa."
I
said,
tell you
"No,
what,
I'm
the
not."
Japanese are onto some stuff with that, man.
They are. By the way, this is what I was working on. This is how my tattooing is coming along. So these are just outlines. I'm working on lines and outlines and junk like that. So,
Cool.
So I couldn't see it really well. It kind of looked like the carvings over at Abados that we were talking about, right?
I erased all those.
There's
Oh,
no
come on.
attack
Only look
helicopter
like-
in there, Professor.
They only look like helicopters.
Looks like a submarine.
So there you go. So hopefully soon I'll be able to tattoo real people. We'll see how it goes. Anyway,
Sweet. Well, thank you, gentlemen, and wave my wanker all over the place. I appreciate
that's
it.
all right. Thanks for letting me stay up another 40 minutes.
Hey, you know, you're the man with the button.
That's right, I am. I certainly. Oh, what happened?
Oh, all right. Yeah, what happened?
Good night,
Clicky,
Professor.
clicky. Good night, gentlemen. Take care.
See you
Good
later.
night, sir. Jesus.
It's such power. I have such phenomenal cosmic power.
You know what they say, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So
cool.
yeah. Be careful with that button, Scotty.
Cool.
Gotta go.
All right, Jason, you have a good night.
You too, sir.
Hey, we are going to be back with Robertson tomorrow.
Oh,
We
okay, cool.
actually talked, Wendy and I talked about an hour today about what we're talking about tomorrow.
Oh, nice. Nice,
So we're
very
gonna talk
nice.
about In Bed with the Tudors.
Oh Lord. Why are we talking about the inbreeding habits of English royal families?
It is really the history of sexuality and sex and permissive lack of permissiveness, the church, the royals, condoms, all of that kind of stuff. The things that were illegal to do with sex, but
Yeah.
you know everybody did them.
Right.
It's going to be an interesting Interesting time tomorrow. So
Probably will. If I have reception at work, I will try to
try to tune in.
Yeah, that's half my problem is that I don't get good signal.
4:00 tomorrow afternoon,
All
5
right.
p.m. Central.
Duly
There'll
noted.
be an announcement up. So
You mean 5 p.m. Eastern?
yeah, I don't know what I said.
You said 5 p.m. Central.
4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern.
Get to bed with you. You can't even tell time.
That's right. That's right. I'm gonna go watch the news or something. All right. Have a good night.
All right,
See
later.
you later. Everybody else, thank you for being here. Thanks for being part of my life and part of this program. We'll see you again tomorrow with Robertson, as we were just saying, and then again Wednesday with this show. So you all have a good night. Live long and prosper.